I've decided to wander around San Miguel.
This city rises in the sun-drenched southeast of El Salvador, roughly 90 miles from the capital, along the legendary Pan-American Highway, a road that stitches together continents. As the country's third largest city, with nearly 300,000 residents, it pulses with history, culture, and untold stories. Yet, remains overlooked by many travelers who pass through on their way elsewhere. For most, it's simply a stopover, a place to rest for the night before moving on. But San Miguel is more than just a waypoint. Behind its bustling streets lies a city of forgotten elegance, sacred spaces, and stories etched with heartbreak. Today, I'm staying long enough to step inside its historic museum, wander through its storied church, and uncover one of El Salvador's most tragic love stories, one that still lingers in the shadows of this remarkable place.
Perhaps there's more to this city than meets the eye. Something quiet, waiting to be discovered.
Before we begin, I want to extend my sincere thanks to some wonderful supporters: Carol, Lauda, Terry, Back to CT, and Will. Your kindness, generosity, and encouragement help make this journey possible, and I'm profoundly grateful. Last week's top comment goes to Terry. I'm delighted so many of you enjoyed the ending. I simply couldn't resist. It seems that skipping dinner may, in fact, be an unexpected catalyst for creativity. To everyone who continues to share your thoughts, thank you. I read every comment, and they genuinely mean a great deal. Please keep them coming. I've started a channel membership. If you're interested, click subscribe and then join for more details. I've spent so much of this series dramatically discussing roads in El Salvador. But I have to give credit where credit is due. The Pan-American Highway deserves its flowers. The road is smoother than my vacation planning ever was. Traffic is surprisingly rare. The drive is effortless. And when the highway allows, I can actually stop white-knuckling the steering wheel long enough to admire just how stunning this country really is. Honestly, the views off this road are so beautiful. They're a borderline distraction hazard.
Seeing as I did not make it to Cuelepa, it was very important for me to visit this museum, which contains many of the archaeological findings from Cuelepa.
Tucked within San Miguel is the East Regional Museum, a colorful, modest building that, at first glance, might seem easy to overlook. But inside, it holds some of the most important archaeological treasures in eastern El Salvador, including remarkable artifacts recovered from the ancient city of Cuelepa. Though small in size, this museum opens the door to thousands of years of history. Its exhibits trace the story of Mesoamerica, a vast cultural world stretching from southern Mexico through Central America, where advanced civilizations shared profound traditions. Maize agriculture, sacred calendars, stepped pyramids, ritual ball courts, glyphic writing, and deeply spiritual ceremonies that shaped entire societies. Here, the story begins with Paleo-Indian hunter-gatherers, when mammoths once roamed this land, long before monumental cities rose from the earth. As centuries passed, agriculture transformed the region. Small settlements became powerful ceremonial centers. Complex religious systems emerged. Societies grew stratified. Monumental architecture, astronomy, writing, and political power flourished. And then came Cuelepa, the site I was unable to reach because I was unwilling to traverse a river. During the pre-classic and classic periods, Cuelepa became one of eastern El Salvador's most influential urban centers, a thriving hub of trade, religion, and regional power. During specific phases, the city expanded dramatically, reflecting both local innovation and broader Mesoamerican influence. The artifacts housed here, ceramics, stone tools, mirrors, ornaments, and ceremonial objects, offer rare glimpses into a civilization that once thrived long before European arrival reshaped the region forever. San Miguel was founded in 1530 by Luis de Moscoso Alvarado, a Spanish conquistador, explorer, and nephew of the infamous Pedro de Alvarado, whose name became synonymous with conquest, bloodshed, and the violent subjugation of indigenous civilizations across Central America. For the Alvarado family, conquest was more than ambition. It was inheritance. Luis established San Miguel not as a peaceful settlement, but as a strategic military outpost in Spain's campaign to dominate the fierce Linca peoples of Chapadistique, a region once known as the place of beautiful orchids. That poetic legacy still survives today in the shadow of Volcan Chapadistique, now called the San Miguel volcano, which continues to loom over the landscape like an ancient guardian. But the Linca did not surrender easily. For more than a decade, they resisted Spanish invasion with extraordinary resilience, fighting to preserve their sovereignty against one of the most aggressive colonial powers of the era. In response, Luis named this settlement San Miguel de la Frontera, Saint Michael of the Frontier, a name layered with symbolism. It invoked the militant protection of the Archangel Michael, while boldly declaring this city as Spain's southern frontier of imperial expansion in what would become El Salvador. Today, San Miguel's museum may be modest in size, but preserved within its walls are the remnants of conquest, resistance, and civilizations far older than colonial rule, revealing that the roots of this city stretch back not merely centuries, but thousands of years.
It's an incredibly small museum, but it's completely free to enter. They have a lot of artifacts. It's definitely worth your time, and the staff is just so kind.
I tried to be your everything, gave my everything, I sold out. Now just look at me, I'm a ghost with nothing left. Hollow, emptied out, got lost, can't be found.
My next stop is the historic center. If you're searching for a quiet, sleepy town where life moves at the speed of a hammock in the breeze, San Miguel is absolutely not that place. The city thrives on movement, noise, energy, and the delightful chaos of being exactly where everything is happening all at once. But here's the catch. While San Miguel loves action, it does not necessarily believe in momentum. Because despite the fast-paced atmosphere, actually getting anywhere quickly is another story. The city often feels like one enormous traffic jam, where your greatest adventure may simply be surviving the next intersection. In San Miguel, you're always in the center of the action, whether you want it to be or not. Parque Guzman, the beating heart of San Miguel, stands as the city's central park, a verdant oasis where daily life and culture intertwine. More than just a green space, it is a living tapestry of the community's spirit, graced by the shade of lush trees and the vivid hues of blossoming flowers. On normal days, the gentle rhythm of leisurely strolls mingles with the laughter of families enjoying afternoon picnics. Today, the park pulses with vitality in preparation for something big tonight. Across from the vibrant energy of Parque Guzman, amid the ceaseless rhythm of San Miguel's modern heart, stands the enduring center of its spiritual life, a sacred space whose story is as turbulent and resilient as the city itself. Since San Miguel's founding in 1530, a parish church has occupied this ground, anchoring the faithful through centuries of upheaval. Yet, in 1655, catastrophe struck when the mighty San Miguel volcano unleashed destruction upon the city. According to legend, the devastation was so absolute that only a single sacred image of the Virgin Mary from the parish church survived the inferno. A miracle that would forever shape the city's religious identity. A new church rose in the mid-18th century, but as San Miguel grew, so too did its spiritual ambitions. In 1862, the former church of San Miguel Archangel was demolished to make way for a grander sanctuary, one that would not only honor the Archangel, but also serve as a monumental oratory to the venerated Virgin of Our Lady of Peace. The result is today's Cathedral Basilica Nuestra Señora de la Paz, a masterpiece of devotion over a century in the making. Its exterior is a striking vision of Spanish colonial elegance, whitewashed walls brushed with golden ochre, crowned by a traditional red-tiled roof. 3 grand arched entrances adorned with dark wooden doors welcome the faithful, the central portal crowned by the city's coat of arms. Yet, it is the twin bell towers, soaring nearly 200 feet into the sky, that define the cathedral's majestic silhouette. Their 6 arched openings, like lanterns suspended in stone, house German bells whose voices echo across the city, while between them stands Christ himself, crowned with thorns and arms extended in eternal sacrifice. Inside, the cathedral unfolds in breathtaking reverence. Rich cherrywood pews line the sanctuary, resting upon green pebbled tiles that shimmer beneath the soft glow of hanging chandeliers. Vibrant, stained glass windows crafted in Mexico flood the sacred interior with brilliant blues, reds, greens, purples, and golds, casting biblical stories in radiant light. An ivory-tiled pathway leads the eye toward the magnificent marble high altar imported from Italy, where the cherished image of Our Lady of Peace presides, the miraculous Marian effigy said to have survived volcanic destruction. Framed by rose-colored marble columns and watched over by white marble angels in perpetual prayer, the altar radiates both splendor and serenity. Throughout El Salvador, the image of Saint Oscar Romero often graces sacred spaces, a reminder of his profound spiritual and moral influence. But here, his presence feels more intimate, more personal.
For 20 years, Romero served as the humble parish priest in this place, long before the world would know him as the voice of the voiceless. In 1962, he consecrated this church, not yet a martyr or a saint, but as the shepherd of his flock. He is more than venerated here. His memory is lived as a part of this city's very foundation.
I wasn't going to come to San Miguel and not tell a story, but I needed to find someplace quiet out of the city center to tell it. And maybe, just maybe, score a chai latte.
Let the fears fly away, ride it out like a wave, calling in all your favors, call 'em in. Let the fears fly away, ride it out like a wave, allow yourself some grace. You can have it, just like the wind, just let it pass through, just let it pass you. You do what you do, just like the wind.
hit me so hard. You got me feeling like I've been dreaming. So don't
just got into this cafe, and there are literally not words for how much I love it. First of all, they've got breakfast all day, and then you've got these little, I don't know, buttons. So like when you need service, you just press a button, and then they show up. I've been saying that we need that in the US for years. That way service knows when you want them and when you don't. It's perfect. The decor is beautiful. You can sit inside, you can sit outside. It's just very, very cozy and quiet. They have music playing in the background, but it's very soft. I love it here.
¿Tienes leche de almendra o leche de coco?
Almendra, sí.
Almendra, okay. Thai, yeah, con leche de almendra.
Okay.
Y
Frío, caliente. Ice o hot?
hot, caliente, por favor. Y mimosa?
Una mimosa.
Yeah.
Solamente.
Sí, para ahora.
Okay.
Más después.
Okay.
Gracias.
Bueno.
First time I saw ya, knew you were the one.
As always, thank you to Timeless Stories of El Salvador for the inspiration.
They say that when the Spanish first came to this land in the mid-1500s, it was the Wild West. The Linca would be the last to fall, holding out for more than a decade with obsidian in their hands and fire in their hearts. But eventually, even the strongest flames are snuffed out by the cold weight of conquest.
In the newly founded town of San Miguel, built with the forced labor of the Linca themselves, ruled two men, Don Balthazar de Cordova, the iron-fisted, crown-appointed mayor, and Padre Tomas de Medina, the town priest. One ruled through force, the other through faith. But in those days, the line between the two was blurred. While Don Balthazar was feared, Padre Tomas was not like any other. Where most Spaniards saw only laborers and heathens, he saw souls, searching, wounded, and worthy. He preached not to dominate, but to understand, and that made him dangerous to Don Balthazar. Among the Linca, a leader still stirred the embers of rebellion, a loyan, fierce and proud. His daughter, Litzli, was as radiant as she was curious. She listened to the language of the conquerors, not to bow to them, but to understand the stories they told, and perhaps to tell her own.
So I ordered a mimosa and sangria. I've been in El Salvador for a minute, and the alcohol has done nothing to me so far. Like, seriously, it's been like drinking water. But here in this teeny tiny cafe, adorable cafe in, where am I? San Miguel. Yeah, the alcohol is clearly kicking in.
A little chai latte to sober up.
When Don Balthazar ordered the forced baptism of the Linca people in the nearby rivers, confusion rippled through the people, just like the current of the river. The holy words were in Latin, when most barely understood Spanish. The water was cold. The gesture was foreign. Aloyan and his men were mysteriously absent. And of those Linca who complied, most of them got away as quickly as possible once the deed was done.
But not Litzli. She ran from nothing. When she emerged from the water, she had questions. Burning, brilliant questions. Litzli waited for Padre Tomas. After everyone was baptized, she approached him. timidly at first. "Why must water change what is already sacred?" she asked in broken Spanish. The priest blinked. "Because water cleanses sin. But were our sins not cleansed with blood, not water?" He stared at her, struck. "I must think on that." And so it began. Day after day, Leetsley came to the church, and Padre Tomas welcomed her. Her inquiries turned into conversations that danced from scripture to stars, from language to longing. In her eyes, he found questions no scripture could easily answer. In his voice, she found a gentleness that did not try to own her truth.
In time, their conversations bloomed into something more. He visited her village and spoke in broken Linka. He offered Spanish classes and even Mass in the Linka tongue. When she spoke of their ancient customs, he listened. In time, their bond grew stronger and stronger.
When the Compostura ceremony neared, a sacred rite of thanks to Mother Earth, strictly forbidden by Don Balthazar, Padre Tomas did more than listen. He stood beside Leetsley in solidarity. There, among the candles and cacao, with smoke from burning copal twisting into the heavens, Padre Tomas lifted his hands and gave thanks not just to Father God, but for the bounty of Mother Earth, an act of syncretism that continues in Linka customs to this day. At dawn, after the ceremony, as the last threads of incense curled into the sunrise and the songs fell silent, Leetsley turned to Padre Tomas and gently tugged at his sleeve. "Come," she said softly. "There is something I want to show you." They walked in silence past the edge of the village, beyond the fields newly blessed with offerings of cacao and copal. Morning spilled over the land like a golden shawl. The path narrowed as they climbed, and the wind carried with it the scent of wildflowers and pine. At last, they reached a ridge where the world seemed to open up beneath their feet. The valley stretched endlessly, bathed in the violet light of the rising sun. Rivers glinted like serpents of silver. Birds wheeled in the painted sky. The land, her land, breathed below them. Leetsley took a long breath and sat, placing her hand gently on the earth. "This," she said, her voice low and reverent, "is where I come when I need to remember who I am. When the world becomes too heavy, I sit here and listen to the voice of the mother. In the hush between wind and leaf, she speaks. She reminds me I belong to her." Padre Tomas sat down and was quiet for a long time. His gaze swept across the horizon, then slowly returned to Leetsley. "It is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen," he said softly. "Not just the view," he added, his voice thick with something unnamed, "but the stillness here, the truth, the peace." She smiled faintly. "That's why I brought you," she said. "You carry so many questions. I thought, perhaps, Mother Earth might answer the ones your books cannot." When they stood, he looked at her then, really looked, and, for a moment, all that separated their worlds fell away. priest and rebel's daughter, Spaniard and Linka. They were simply two souls standing where heaven met earth, with nothing between them but breath and silence. "Thank you," he whispered. "No," she replied. "Thank her."
But beautiful moments are barely allowed to remain, especially when there is anger and mistrust on the horizon.
Aloyan followed and watched. His daughter smiled at a Spaniard. She laughed with a priest. She brought the enemy into their sacred spaces. The blood in his veins burned. And Don Balthazar? He stirred with quiet fury. A priest who refused to erase the Linka was, to him, a traitor. First offering mass in their tongue without permission, and now, worse, participating in one of their pagan rites. Disgusted, he pinned a letter to San Salvador, demanding Padre Tomas's reassignment.
But fate moved swifter than ink. Long before the letter had left his office, destiny had already drawn its blade.
One morning, the sun soft in the sky, Aloyan came to Leetsley with the weight of decision in his voice. "It is time," he declared. "You will marry Yektel. He is loyal, strong, and devoted to the ways of our people. You will begin a family. It is what must be done. You will do as you are told," he spat. Leetsley knew it was useless to argue. She only bowed her head, her voice caught behind a wall of sorrow. That night, she fled into the forest. For days, she wandered like a wounded deer, her tears falling into the soil that once gave her comfort. Her heart was breaking under the weight of silence and duty.
When she could bear it no longer, she returned to the only person who had ever truly listened.
Leetsley arrived at the church at dusk, the last of the daylight spilling through the stained glass and painting the stone in hues of gold and blood. Padre Tomas was in deep prayer. "Padre Tomas," she called to him as she approached, her voice trembling. He looked up, surprised by the suddenness of her arrival, but said nothing. "I know what the book says, but I cannot obey my father. Not this time." Padre Tomas rose, concerned. "He wants me to marry a man I do not love," she continued. "But I have already given my heart." She took a trembling breath. "I love you." The words hung in the air like incense, fragile, holy, and full of fire. Padre Tomas froze. The color drained from his face. He opened his mouth, but no words came. No gesture, no breath of reassurance, no trace of what she needed to see. For a single aching heartbeat, Leetsley waited. But he said nothing. Tears welled in her eyes, and she turned and fled the church, her sobs echoing against its cold, indifferent walls.
Alone in the silence, Padre Tomas stood before the altar. His hands trembled. He was furious, not at Leetsley, at himself.
He had taken vows, vows of service, of obedience, of chastity. But in her eyes, he had seen something deeper than temptation. He had seen his own soul reflected. And now, she was gone. He loved her with a love he had no right to claim. But it was there, all the same, unbidden, undeniable, and absolute. For the first time in his life, faith failed to give him peace. Days passed. When Leetsley did not come to the Linca Mass, Padre Tomas grew uneasy. He inquired gently after her, but none could say where she had gone. Troubled, he left the church and journeyed to the Linca village, hoping someone there had seen her. Yet, again, there were only puzzled glances and quiet shrugs. No one knew for sure. At last, with a heaviness he could no longer hide, Padre Tomas set off toward the only place left in his heart, the overlook above the valley, where the heavens met the earth in magical hues. Guided by the sounds of nature, he climbed the familiar path alone, the sun descending in a quiet blaze of gold and fire.
Finally, there she was. He trusted Mother Earth, and she led him to her. Leetsley sat on the edge of the ridge, a silent figure framed by dying light.
Leetsley's face was turned to the horizon, and she did not hear his steps until he stood behind her. When she turned, her eyes shimmered with tears. She wiped them away quickly, as if ashamed to be seen in sorrow. Although he stood close, she avoided eye contact, so he knelt beside her. "I once told you," he said softly, "that this was the most beautiful sight I had ever seen." She looked at him, startled by the sudden tenderness in his voice. "I was wrong," he said. "This is the second most beautiful sight I've ever seen." He reached for her trembling hand. "You," he whispered, "are the first." At that, Leetsley took his hand and wept again. Not from pain this time, but from the terrible, beautiful relief of being seen. Padre Tomas kissed away her tears, one by one, and with them, the weight of unspoken moments.
That night, he let go of his vows, his vestments, and the silent prison of duty. That night, only one night, he allowed himself to be a man, and in that moment, he knew what it was to be alive.
At dawn, Leetsley and Padre Tomas awoke in the quiet hush of morning, wrapped in each other's arms. For a fleeting moment, all was still, only the rhythm of their breath, the warmth of shared skin, and the soft light of a new day spilling across the valley. Their joy was quiet, tender, and complete.
Nature, Violet, love. For a brief moment, everything was perfect. Then, rage shattered the silence. A voice, raw and thunderous, broke across the ridge.
Aloyan. He stormed like a tempest, his face contorted with fury, his voice laced with betrayal. He roared, "You defiled my daughter!" His words crackling with the force of ancestral wrath. Leetsley pleaded, her hands outstretched in peace. "Father, listen, please, listen." But reason could not reach him. Every word they spoke was salt in a wound too deep to heal. His rage grew, unrelenting, blind. Then, obsidian flashed. Aloyan drew the ancestral blade. black and gleaming. With a cry torn from centuries of honor and anguish, he threw it at Padre Tomas, who accepted his fate. But the blade missed its mark. Leetsley stepped between them with the fierce clarity of love. Aloyan's hate found his daughter instead. There was a beat of silence. Then the world shattered. Aloyan stood frozen, trembling. The wrath in his eyes gave way to horror. Padre Tomas caught Leetsley as she fell. He cradled her to his chest. His trembling hands drowned in blood when he pressed against the wound as if he could will the life back into her. Her breath came shallow. Her eyes fluttered. "No, no, stay with me," he whispered. "Please." She smiled faintly, her fingers brushing his cheek one last time. But the light in her gaze was already dimming, like a candle at the end of its wick. Then, stillness. A cry of anguish tore from Padre Tomas's throat as he clutched her to him, rocking her lifeless body beneath the morning sky. He wept into her hair, his voice ragged with grief, mourning not only the woman he loved, but the future they were never allowed to have.
Aloyan fled down the mountain like a man possessed, his face pale with pain, his rage-filled voice echoing throughout the valley. He called out to his most loyal men, accusing Padre Tomas of the unthinkable.
Aloyan shouted, "He killed her! The priest violated and murdered my daughter." Without question, Aloyan's loyal men rallied behind him. Most villagers, however, were in shock. They seized a grieving and confused Padre Tomas and bound his hands. A runner was dispatched at once to San Miguel to summon Don Baltazar de Cordova, the mayor and the crown's appointed magistrate. By midday, Don Baltazar arrived, stoic and composed, a man of law and empire, with a scribe at his side, one trained in the rudiments of the Linka tongue. He examined the scene with cold detachment, his boots slippery from the bloody grass where Leetsley had fallen. Padre Tomas, bloodstained and pale with heartbreak, pleaded his innocence. "It was not I who struck her down," he said hoarsely. "It was Aloyan." Don Baltazar considered the accusation. He turned to the father, then back to the trembling priest. Why would a father kill his only daughter? Why are you the only one covered in blood? Devastated, Padre Tomas dropped to his knees. He had no answer.
Don Baltazar knew well, though he dare not say it out loud, that under the laws of the realm, the death of a Linka woman at the hands of a Spanish priest was no crime at all. However, instead of declaring a verdict, he calculated.
Don Baltazar asked Aloyan, "What is the punishment among your people for the taking of a life?" Aloyan's eyes narrowed. His voice was steady. "Beheading." Don Baltazar gave a slow nod, feigning solemnity. "Then, so be it," he said. "The matter falls under your customs. Let justice be served in the manner of your ancestors." His scribe recording all. With that, he turned to leave, brushing dust from his hands as though the matter were already behind him. His scribe rode in silence, ink drying on his pages. Behind them, Padre Tomas collapsed to his knees, first pleading for mercy, then, when no mercy came, begging for a priest to hear his final confession. But none would come. Padre Tomas, once the keeper of absolution, found himself alone, unshriven, unheard, and condemned. A Loyan stepped forward, expression carved in fury and grief, an obsidian blade glinting darkly in his grip. Without ceremony, without a word, a Loyan raised it high, and with the same hand that he had ended Leetsley's life, he brought down the blade upon the man who dared to love her.
Something ancient and sorrowful passed through the valley that day, carried on the wind like a prayer never answered.
Back in San Miguel, beneath the fading light of an orange dusk, Don Baltazar de Cordova summoned his scribe to a private chamber. The magistrate's face was calm, composed, yet behind his eyes smoldered calculation. "You will speak of this to no one," he said coldly. "Not in whispers, not in confession, on pain of death." The scribe, trembling, swore the oath. With a wave, he was dismissed. Without a word, Don Baltazar took the pages, the ink still wet with the truth, and fed them to the flame. The parchment curled, blackened, and vanished into ash. He watched it burn with a quiet satisfaction. For, in all honesty, Don Baltazar had never believed Padre Tomas guilty. He had seen the anguish in the man's eyes, heard the sincerity in his pleas. But none of that mattered. Fate, it seemed, had offered him a gift. With the priest dead by native hands, he would return to the capital with a tale of rebellion, of Linca insurrection and treachery. It would be the pretext he needed to tighten the crown's grip, to silence dissent, to spill more native blood under the banner of God and country. And, with the post of parish priest now conveniently vacant, he would appoint a man of his choosing, someone pliable, obedient, someone whose sermons would echo imperial doctrine, not conscience. Don Baltazar smiled to himself, the firelight dancing in his eyes. The truth was dead and buried alongside Leetsley and Padre Tomas. And now, the narrative, like the land, belonged to him.
From time to time in El Salvador, under a moonlit sky and the weight of unspoken guilt, a sinner finds themselves returning home long after midnight. Perhaps they drank too deeply. Perhaps they took a lover that was not their spouse. Whatever the reason, their path leads them astray.
And there, at the edge of the road, hidden among shadows where nothing should stand, the sinner sees it. No one else sees it. No one ever does. A small chapel, glowing faintly in the darkness. Its doors are open. Drawn by something they cannot name, the sinner steps inside and takes their seat. Candlelight flickers. The pews are filled with silent worshipers, faces down in prayer. Angelic voices rise in solemn hymn, rich and beautiful, like the echo of salvation itself. The air is thick with incense and memory. The priest begins Mass, his voice low and reverent, cloaked in Latin murmurs. All seems well until the moment of communion, and the priest turns to face the congregation. And in that instant, the doors shut, and the illusion shatters. His hands are soaked in blood. His cassock clings to a body drenched in crimson. From his shoulders, where a face should be, nothing remains. His head is gone, cleaved clean from the neck. Yet, still, he moves. Still, he offers the sacrament, as blood drips in slow, rhythmic pulses. The pews of worshippers look up and toward the sinner. Their faces missing, just like their morals. The sinner cannot move. They cannot scream. They are frozen in fear because they have come to the Mass of El Padre Sin Cabeza, the headless priest. He is no demon. He is no saint. He is a warning, a reminder that even those with noble hearts fall into sin, that the road to damnation is not always paved in wickedness, but in good hearts, twisted and betrayed.
So take heed. Acknowledge what weighs upon your soul. Do not wait, because the transgressions you hide may cling to you longer than life permits. So confess your sins, or carry them beyond the grave. Would you visit San Miguel? Let me know in the comments. And while you're at it, please click the like button. It helps more than you know.
I may have lingered in my beloved Café just a little too long, because by the time I finally emerged, darkness had arrived, and apparently, so had my curiosity. I'm not exactly a night owl, but something was happening outside the church in Parque Guzman, and naturally, I needed to investigate. First, however, Airbnb check-in. And not just any Airbnb. This one comes with a staffed security gate, actual guards, and the kind of entrance that makes you feel like you should probably have diplomatic clearance. At the time of booking, this seemed like an excellent life choice. Now that I've spent time in El Salvador and realize how safe it feels, I understand this level of security may have been slightly dramatic. Inside the gates lies an aggressively adorable cookie-cutter suburban neighborhood where every condo appears to have been copy-pasted by someone deeply committed to uniformity. As is often the case, the property looks significantly better in daylight, so please enjoy a little movie magic. Volcan Chapadistique stands watch in the distance, giving the neighborhood an unexpectedly majestic backdrop. Each unit has its own parking pad. Inside, the front door opens into a cozy living room, decorated in warm earth tones, complete with a sofa that says, "I'm practical, but I try." There are 2 bedrooms, though honestly, it doesn't matter which one I choose because this place is so quiet, it feels like sound itself signed an NDA. Both rooms have air conditioning, tiny closets, and all the essentials. There's also super fast Wi-Fi and an enormous flat screen TV in the kitchen that I will absolutely not be using, alongside a full kitchen stocked with appliances that suggest I might cook, which is adorable. The bathroom? No hot water, but at this point, that's less of a surprise and more of a cultural expectation. Out back, the kitchen opens into a fully enclosed patio, perfect for reflection, solitude, or wondering why I paid extra for security guards when I could have just embraced chaos. Link in the description. Now, let's quickly head back into town before it gets too late and find out what's happening tonight in that square.
I'm superstitious, but it doesn't have to do with me. Won't waste my wishes on it if it wasn't meant to be.
Add San Miguel to your El Salvador itinerary. Let its sights, sounds, and vibrant aromas weave their spell. Allow the city to unfold at its own rhythm. You will not be disappointed. Stay curious, be inspired, find freedom, wander elsewhere. And if you ever stand alone, drawn toward a church in the middle of nowhere no one else can see, remember, such thresholds open only for the one they summon. Maybe I'll see you in the next one.